Go. Just about ready. Hello, my name is David Lance, and I want to welcome you to this issue of Discovering Truth at the Movies. Today, in this episode of the Chronicles of Belteshazzar, a plot to kill Daniel is revealed. Now, while there's no such plot to be found in the book of Daniel, there is a real plot that Queen Esther had to face in the book of Esther. We'll take a look at that at the movie A Night with the King to see how they might have dealt with palace intrigue in the book of Esther. And from that, we'll develop a question for reflection, which is that we'll consider how to respond when we or those we love are threatened with false accusations or claims. Well, I want to ask you to consider joining me as I read through each chapter of Chronicles of Belteshazzar that I'm providing along with some commentary. I'm working on getting this thing published. I've actually got a company that I'm working with. I have some technical details to work out, but hopefully in the next 2 months, hopefully by September of this year. Today is the middle of July. I hope to be ready to launch things. Today, we're going to be looking at another chapter in Book 4, Nebuchadnezzar's Dream. And so, without further ado, let's look at the plot to kill Daniel. Reuben had not stopped to eat dinner since the courier had delivered the message from Troas. Because he had taken care to code the message in Athbash, Reuben had had to spend the last several hours decoding the message. As he worked, Reuben thought again of the beauty of this simple yet powerful cipher. No matter how many times he had to go through this process, he never lost his amazement for the ingeniousness with which the Hebrew scribes had used their language to disguise a code which could only be broken by those who held the key. To decode the message, Reuben worked with a device called an Athbash disc, a wheel the size of a man's fist attached to a handle. An inner wheel held by spokes attached to the outer rim would rotate along an axis. On both the rims of the outer and the inner wheels, the Hebrew alphabet appeared, with one difference. Along the outer wheel, the Hebrew alphabet read from right to left, with the first letter appearing at the top of the wheel. On the inner wheel, however, the letters read in the reverse order, with the last letter at the top of the wheel and read from left to right. The key to deciphering the message was knowing exactly at what point to line up the inner and outer wheels, and then in which direction to rotate the inner wheel to begin the decoding process. Without that information and the coding wheel, deciphering a message written in Athbash was nearly impossible. An added advantage to the use of Athbash discs was that, to a non-Hebrew, the device could simply be explained as a prayer wheel. Thus, if Athbash discs were to be found with anyone other than a Hebrew, explaining how they got it would prove difficult. That was why Troas's elaborate plan called for passing his cousin off as a Hebrew. Reuben had decoded almost all of the message. Only a few words remained. The intent, however, was clear. So far, what Troas had said was, Daniel must be assassinated. Jehoiakim has learned that Daniel will ask Nebuchadnezzar to install Zedekiah as king and depose Jehoiakim. Gain our friends' help. Tell them the assassination is an internal Hebrew affair. Reuben worked quickly to decode the remaining phrase, smiling to himself at the beauty of Troas's plan. Quickly, he changed his clothing to something more suitable for an audience with Timnah. From your point of view, what you say makes sense, Timnah said slowly, choosing her words carefully. Ever since Nebuchadnezzar has returned in defeat from Migdol, Daniel has opposed Haman at every turn at court. And now he seeks to depose Jehoiakim and convince Nebuchadnezzar to install Zedekiah, his half-brother, as king. I can see why you believe Daniel has turned his back on his people and must be killed. Reuben had gone straight to Timnah's home after he finished decoding the message. Troas's motive for enlisting her support was quite clear. Because of her special relationship with Haman, He had no doubt that if Timnah could be convinced of the need to kill Daniel, she would in turn enlist the aid of Nebuchadnezzar's high priest. While Reuben was right in that analysis, she had to make sure that killing Daniel would also benefit her people. Before I can help you, I must be very certain of one answer to one question. Why should Ashkelon care who is the king of Judah and help you kill Daniel? We both know that Haman is against having exiles from the conquered lands here in Babylon, Reuben began. Even Naaman is said to be against it. Among the Hebrews, we believe that Babylon, not Egypt, is the greater evil, that Nebuchadnezzar is our nemesis and Daniel is his agent. If Daniel is allowed to consolidate his power base at court under the guise of quieting the civil unrest in this realm, who will be able to stop him? Beware his true motives, Timnah. Daniel secretly plots the destruction of your people. Timnah had to admit to herself that analysis rang true. Were she in Daniel's place, she would do exactly the same thing. She fought to suppress her emotions, her hatred for those people. Timnah needed Reuben and therefore needed him to believe her motives for helping the Hebrews eliminate the traitor from their midst was born of pure motives. She thought again of the Greek, Troas, and his message for her father when he said, I will help you and let me tell you why. Just before Nebuchadnezzar attacked our city, a man named Troas came to tell us of an alliance that was being formed to fight with Egypt against Babylon. Were you aware of this? No, this is the first time I've ever heard of such an idea, Reuben lied. I didn't want to listen at the time, but now I see that he was right. I will go to Haman tomorrow evening and see what I might learn. It may be that we can enlist his help against Daniel, for I know that he hates him also. Thank you for coming. Go now. Reuben rose to leave, and Shelah escorted him to the door. He turned and handing her a pouch of silver coins, said, I will contact you soon. You have done well, and left. As soon as he was gone, Timnah called Shelah to her. Before heeding her mistress's call, Shelah hid the pouch in a pocket of her robe. It is time that we began to put our plan to work, she told Shelah. Long ago, when we were brought to this place, I asked you to select cell leaders and charge them to keep watch for when we might plan our escape. Have you done so? Yes, my queen. Good. Shelah, I want you to send the word to be on watch. Go and report back to me once you have our people in place. Timnah watched as Shelah left to do her bidding. This was a delicate situation into which she had inserted herself. She said a silent prayer to Dagon, her god, to give her victory in revenge over her father's death and her people's enslavement. Grandpa, a little while ago, Daniel told Naaman to get him an audience with King Nebuchadnezzar. What does audience mean? Josiah sat patiently, looking up at his grandfather, waiting expectantly for an answer. Well, that's an excellent question, Josiah. Think of when you have a Christmas program at your school and all the children sing. Who all comes to listen to you and your classmates sing? Grandpa beamed at grandson number 3, eager to help him understand. Well, you and Nai were there, and so were Mom and Dad. That was a lot of fun, Grandpa. That's right. All those people who came to watch you, they are what we call an audience. Their job is to listen to you. Your job is to sing to them. Josiah thought for a moment and then asked, is Daniel going to sing for King Nebuchadnezzar? Grandpa belly laughed. No, but when Daniel asks for an audience with King Nebuchadnezzar, what he means is that he would like to come and speak to the king. He will be an audience of one person. Grandpa, would anything happen to Daniel if King Nebuchadnezzar got mad at what Daniel had to say? Matthew had decided to follow up on Josiah's question. Grandpa looked at him for a long moment, thinking about how to answer him. Finally, he said, yes, Matthew, it is very possible that King Nebuchadnezzar would have done something terrible to Daniel. In those days, it was illegal to even speak to the king unless he spoke first to you. Do you remember the story of Queen Esther when her uncle Mordecai wanted her to go and speak to the king? Yes, I remember, answered Isaac excitedly. She was afraid that if she just went and told the king the message that Mordecai wanted her to deliver, she could be killed. It was forbidden to speak to the king unless the king first asked you to speak. Well, let me tell you, if Grandpa tried that around here and I had to ask his permission to talk, he'd be the one in a heap bit of trouble. Nai had opened the door to check on Grandpa and the boys, and she winked at Grandpa before turning back to the boys. How about a break for some hot chocolate before Grandpa continues with the story? I'm making some for Gabriel, and I thought I'd ask the rest of you if you wanted some. Yay! All three of the boys screamed and scrambled out of their chairs to go into the kitchen with their grandmother. Well, I want to take a moment now for a personal reflection. One of the issues that some might find fault with in this storyline that I'm using is that there's nowhere in the Bible that we find any evidence that there was an attempt to assassinate Daniel. Yes, in Daniel 6, the Babylonian officials plot against him to have him thrown into the lion's den, but that's different from what I'm envisioning here. But we do find an assassination plot in the story of Esther. Remember how Esther in chapter 6, verse 2, where Mordecai was honored because King Xerxes was reminded of how he had foiled a plot to assassinate the king? Clearly, such palace court conspiracies were known to have happened. In Daniel chapter 2, verse 48, after he interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the king rewarded Daniel by putting him in charge of all of Babylon, as well as making him the chief wise man. In any sort of palace environment, there would have been political rivals who were not happy with that sort of thing. And just as we are told of the conspiracy that Esther was able to uncover, it's well within the realm of possibility that something similar would have happened that affected Daniel. The interaction that Timnah has with a spy named Reuben, as well as another Greek named Troas, is very condensed in my story of the Chronicles of Belteshazzar. You see, Troas is a major character in both of my original novels, The Brotherhood of the Scroll and especially The Sword of the Scroll. Also excluded from the storyline here is most of the aspects involved with the Canaanite gods, such as Dagon. They demanded as part of their worship the sacrificing of infants in the fire. I did not wish to dwell on that topic in this novel, but I feel that at some point our young people need to be introduced to that aspect of the Old Testament story. I hope that any adults following this discussion will think seriously about how to bring up such information in an age-appropriate fashion. The Queen of Ashkelon, a woman in such a role, might well have been a priestess in the worship of Dagon. Now, I don't want to reveal too much at this point in the plot line of the story here about Timnah, but let me just say that the character Timnah experiences an interesting path to faith as the story unfolds. Well, that leads me back to the story of Esther. She truly does experience the full force of the political plots and palace intrigue. Esther, in her own right, was a wise, intelligent woman who reluctantly brought her A game to the political knife fights of the Persian court. She struggles to save her people from a terrible fate, while at the same time being quite circumspect about her own background. God's hand in guiding Esther in that difficult set of circumstances is remembered each year when the Jews celebrate Purim. In chapter 7 of the book of Esther, there comes a moment, as dramatized in the movie A Night with the King, when she has the following conversation with King Xerxes. She says, "Let my life be given me at my petition and my people at my request." Xerxes responds, "You demand of me your life and that of your people? You have yet to tell me who they are." That leads to a question for reflection from this chapter. And that is, how does God call us to respond when we, or those we love, are threatened with false claims and accusations? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Chronicles of Belteshazzar. You can sign up for more information about the book if you go to the website here listed on the screen. It'll also be in the discussion of the podcast. When you sign up for my newsletter, Conversations with the Culture, you'll get my Discovering Godly Leadership at the Movies with my thanks. Well, you can also go to davidlance.podomatic.com to listen to the podcast. Well, thanks so much. And until next time, God bless.